Most people understand, in an abstract way, that health matters. They know they should move more, sleep better, eat less processed food, drink more water, spend less time sitting. They know all of this. And still, for most people, the gap between what they know and what they actually do is enormous. This video is not going to give you a new diet plan or a new workout routine. There are millions of those already, and they have not solved the problem. The problem is not information. It is relationship. The relationship you have with your body. And the understanding of what health actually is and why it matters far beyond how you look. Let us start with where most people begin. Appearance. For most people, the first motivation to get healthier is how they look in the mirror. They want to lose weight, look fitter, feel more confident in their body. That is a real and valid motivation. There is nothing wrong with it. But it is one of the weakest motivations for long-term health discipline. Because appearance-based motivation is driven by comparison and dissatisfaction. And when the gap between where you are and where you want to be feels too large, the motivation collapses. What lasts longer is understanding what health actually does. Not what it looks like. What it gives you. Health gives you energy, clarity, emotional stability, resilience, the ability to show up fully for the things that matter to you. Without it, everything else in your life becomes harder. Your work suffers. Your relationships are strained. Your ability to maintain any other form of discipline, sleep, money, habits, weakens when your body is not being taken care of. Health is not a separate domain. It is the foundation everything else rests on. And the modern world is making it harder to maintain that foundation than at any point in human history. Human beings evolved to move. For most of our existence, movement was not a choice. It was survival. You hunted. You walked. You carried. You built. Physical activity was woven into the fabric of daily life. That changed rapidly. Desk jobs. Cars. Delivery services. Remote work. Entertainment that requires nothing more than a thumb and a screen. A global review of adults across 47 countries found that the average person now sits for between 4.5 to 6.5 hours each day. And that number is increasing every year. Research has called this sitting disease. And it is not a metaphor. Prolonged sitting has been linked to increased risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, and certain cancers. Studies have found that sitting for more than 10 hours a day raises the risk of dying from cardiovascular disease significantly, even in people who exercise regularly at other times of day. The World Health Organization now identifies physical inactivity as one of the leading risk factors for death worldwide. Adults who do not get enough physical activity have a 20 to 30% higher risk of death than those who do. These are not fringe statistics. They are the documented consequences of a lifestyle that the human body was never designed for. But here is where this becomes something more than a health warning. Exercise is not just about preventing disease. It is one of the most powerful tools for improving the quality of your life right now. Today. This week. Research consistently shows that regular physical activity reduces symptoms of depression and anxiety. In some studies, aerobic exercise has been found to be as effective as antidepressant medication for mild to moderate depression. Not as a replacement for medical treatment, but as evidence of how fundamentally linked movement is to mood. The mechanism is real. Exercise triggers the release of endorphins, serotonin, and dopamine, the same neurotransmitters that antidepressants target. It also increases the production of a protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. BDNF promotes the growth of new brain cells, particularly in the hippocampus, the region involved in memory, learning, and emotional regulation. In other words, exercise literally grows your brain. People with depression and anxiety tend to have lower levels of BDNF than people without. And one of the things antidepressants do is increase BDNF production. Exercise does the same thing, through a completely different mechanism. Without a prescription. Without side effects. This does not mean exercise replaces medical treatment. It means movement is far more powerful than most people give it credit for. Beyond the brain, exercise improves the quality of sleep. It strengthens the cardiovascular system. It regulates blood sugar. It reduces chronic inflammation, which is now understood to play a role in a wide range of physical and mental health conditions. Regular physical activity is one of the few interventions that simultaneously improves virtually every major system in the body. And yet most people treat it as optional. Something to get around to eventually. It also reduces cortisol, the stress hormone. Regular physical activity trains the body's stress response system to be more efficient and more resilient. People who exercise consistently tend to recover from stressful situations faster. They feel calmer in the hours after exercise. And over time, they build a physiological buffer against the daily pressures of modern life. Now, a study published by Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health found that running for just 15 minutes a day, or walking for 1 hour, may reduce the risk of major depression by 26%. That is not a small effect. From something most people could do. This is why the discipline of health is one of the most important chapters in this series. Because if you are tired all the time, if your mood is low, if your stress is chronically high, if your body feels like a burden rather than a home, every other form of discipline becomes exponentially harder. Sleep is disrupted. Focus is fragmented. Emotional regulation is weaker. Motivation is nowhere. Health is not one of the things to manage alongside everything else. It is the condition under which everything else becomes manageable. So what does the discipline of health actually require? The first thing it requires is an honest confrontation with where you actually are. Not where you plan to be. Not the version of yourself you will start taking care of next Monday. Where you are right now. How much are you actually moving? Not in your best week. In an average week. How is your food? Not when you are being careful. When you are tired and busy and there is no plan. How much time are you spending sitting without any meaningful break? How much water are you drinking? How often are you outside? When did you last feel genuinely physically well? These questions are not meant to create guilt. They are meant to create honesty. Because the discipline of health cannot begin from a comfortable story about where you almost are. It has to begin from where you actually are. And most people, when they answer honestly, realize the gap is larger than they admitted to themselves. That is not a failure. It is just information. And information is the beginning of change. The gap between your honest current state and what your body actually needs is where the discipline work begins. The second thing it requires is releasing the all-or-nothing mindset that kills most health efforts. Most people approach health like a binary. Either they are doing it properly, exercising 5 days a week, eating perfectly, tracking everything, or they have given up. But bodies do not respond to perfection. They respond to consistency. 10 minutes of movement a day is dramatically better than 0. A walk after dinner is better than the planned gym session that never happens. Slightly better food choices most of the time are more impactful than a perfect diet you cannot sustain. The goal is not to become an athlete. The goal is to stop being sedentary. To give your body the baseline of movement it was designed for. Consistently. Over a long enough period of time that it changes who you are. The third thing it requires is connecting health to your values, not just your goals. Goals are fragile. I want to lose 10 kilos. I want to run a marathon. I want to look a certain way. These goals are fine as starting points, but they are easy to abandon when life gets hard. Values are different. If you value being present for your family, health is how you protect that. If you value doing meaningful work, health is what gives you the energy for it. If you value living a full life, health is the non-negotiable foundation that makes it possible. When health becomes an expression of what you care about rather than a punishment for not being good enough, the motivation becomes more durable. Less about guilt. More about investment. The fourth thing is designing your environment to make movement easier. Discipline does not always mean willpower. Sometimes it means removing friction. Making the right choice the easy choice. Put your running shoes where you will see them in the morning. Take the stairs by default rather than choosing it each time. Build a short walk into your lunch break so it happens automatically rather than when motivation strikes. Stand during calls. Walk while thinking. These are not workouts. They are movement woven into the structure of daily life. And they add up. Over weeks and months, they shift the baseline of how much your body moves. Quietly. Without a dramatic commitment. Because the research on sedentary behavior makes one thing clear. It is not just about the exercise you do. It is also about how much time you spend completely still. And breaking that stillness, even briefly, even gently, matters. The fifth thing, and perhaps the most overlooked, is starting absurdly small. Not because you are not capable of more. But because the research on habit formation tells us that frequency matters more than intensity. Showing up every day for 10 minutes builds a stronger foundation than showing up once a week for an hour. And starting small removes the friction that stops most people before they begin. You do not need a gym. You do not need equipment. You do not need a plan that takes 6 months to figure out. You need to stand up and move. Today. For whatever amount of time is actually possible. Because the discipline of health is not built in a gym over 6 dramatic weeks. It is built in kitchens, in hallways, in lunch breaks, in the small choices made every day that barely feel significant in the moment. Until one day they are. Spending fully on what you truly value. Releasing what you do not. Saving consistently for the future. And staying in the game long enough for time to do its work. Not glamorous. But deeply effective. And more achievable than most people think. Not because money is simple. But because the most important financial decisions are not technical. They are behavioral. And behavior, unlike markets, is something you can actually control. I hope this video brought you something meaningful. If you find it helpful, please like and share it with someone who may need it. Subscribe if you would like to hear more stories like this. Wishing you a calm and peaceful day.